Alright, so last week went really well. The Primate Cashier deck performed way better than I thought it would, and I think I'm going to keep going with that same kind of energy and that type of deck. So instead of going back to Blue Eyes or anything like that, I'm actually going to go with a different deck this week, because the 3v3 is in just a few days, and obviously I want my team to do well. There's a lot of prizing up for grabs, multiple boxes and stuff like that, so we want to do well, and because of that, I'm going to play the best deck I can. And unfortunately for me, I don't think that that's Blue Eyes. My issue with Blue Eyes is that I feel like in-game, I don't have enough agency. And what I mean by that is I don't have enough control over the true pace of the game. It doesn't feel like I am an active participant from behind. Often when you fall behind with that deck, you begin to feel like you're just kind of watching as you lose a lot of times, or you just blow them out of the water when you come back and the game's just over. And that's great, but I want the games to be a lot more nuanced than that. I want to actually be able to, if I do make a mistake or I do fall behind, I want to be able to crawl back in a meaningful way consistently. So with that in mind, I went ahead and picked up the Fiendsmith cards that I just recently got rid of due to not wanting them in Ryzeal and the reprints, looming and stuff like that. I picked them back up, and we're gonna try Cashier Fiendsmith tonight. It's just a really simple deck. 2 bodies equals Moon, which equals the full Fiendsmith combo, and then we get to go from there. Not too much to say in terms of like the playstyle or anything like that. It's a very simple, low to the ground control deck. With that in mind, though, I just want to show you guys the deck, so let's go ahead. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got the deck set up in front of me, and it is very straightforward. There is just the Cashier cards, then the Fiendsmith cards, and then a ton of hand traps. And that's honestly really how I like the deck to be played. It's very similar to the Primate deck in that it was the Cashier cards, Primate cards, then it's on hand traps. And the idea being that you would just be able to draw enough hand traps and enough engine intermixed because of the ratios that you would get a chance to just grind out the game. And as we saw last week, it worked pretty well. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'll show you the deck. As always, if you want to pick up any of the cards found in this video, go ahead and use the affiliate link in the description below. A portion of that does help out the channel, so that's pretty awesome. You're helping me while helping yourselves out. Gotta love that. So first up for the Cashier cards, we have 3 Braidsoth, 3 Unicorns, 2 Fenrir, and 1 Birth. There's no copies of Riseheart or what's the name of it? Theosis. That's because I have to be able to use the Xyz links and fusions and synchros and everything like that. I need to use like the whole, all the colors basically of the extra deck. But what's really cool here is that these cards are just high value cards, and when you're using stuff like the Fiendsmith cards, for example, and hand traps to simplify the game state, that's where the Cashier cards really shine. Just like in the Primate deck, you would use cards like Ether Barrel and Drill Beam to simplify the game state, and then the Cashier cards could really shine much the same. But the thing I like about this a little bit more, though, is that the Cashier cards are also combo. Like if I open up Fenrir Birth, for example, or Birth Planet, or even Unicorn Birth and or Unicorn Planet, that's the full Fiendsmith combo, and then I can obviously bring back one of the names and have an extra layer of interaction. Then the Fiendsmith cards, 3 Engraver, 3 Lacrimas, 1 Lurie, 2 Tract, and the 1 Paradise. Not much to say there. Paradise is just like a good like interaction card. The double tract is obviously going to be really good because of all of the light fiends. The triple Lacrima is just because it is a 1-card combo, even through hand traps. Basically, it just provides you follow-up. There's not much to say about this deck. It's not like this is anything new. This is something that everyone's known about. And then for the hand traps, there's 3 Ash Blossoms, 3 Joel Mockbirds. I upped it to 3 Effect Veiler, and then 3 Imperm, 3 Purge, 2 ogres, 2 bells, 2 moons, and 2 Nibirus. So the reason for upping Valor and Nibiru in particular is just because I wanted to have more of these, and I felt like these were actually a little bit better than I gave them initial credit for, especially Nibiru. Nibiru paired with literally any other hand trap is just devastating. So being able to have that more often, I think, is going to be beneficial. It also opens up the side deck a little bit. These are all kind of just like iffier hand traps, but all of these are really good right now. So that's why you see 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And then for the extract, you've got Necroquip, double Desiree. The second one is primarily for the what's it called? Fiendsmith of Paradise. I could consider cutting Desiree to 1. And then there's 1 Chaos Angel, Caesar, Lars, and then I'm playing M7. M7 is not just because of the effects, but it's also because of Purge. Because I can't actually use Lars or Caesar's effect if I activate Purge from hand. So I wanted to have a rank 6 that I could use. Then I'm playing 1 Shangri-Ira, 1 Typhon, and 1 Zeus. One card I was considering, and I'm still trying to figure out where I would even put it, I might cut the second Desiree for it, honestly, is a copy of Gaia Charger or a copy of Full Armored Dark Knight Lancer. It's another rank 7. It's just a stronger version of Gaia Charger in that case. This doesn't do piercing, but I think this might be solid. So that's something I'm considering as well. And then for links, there's SP, Requiem, Sequence, Moon, and Agamothe. It's all very straightforward. And then the side deck is honestly just trading out non-engine for non-engine, much like last time. So there's the 3 Fuelos, the 3rd Bell, the 3rd Ogre, and then I'm actually siding Rise Heart. This is so that way when I go first, I can take out, insert random hand trap here or something like that, and bring in a single Rise Heart, because then it means that Fenrir is a 1-card combo, because I can go Fenrir, add Rise Heart, normal summon Rise Heart, and then do the combo from there. Also means that if I'm unfortunate enough to get paired against somebody who's still somehow playing Tenpai, I can always go into Shangri-Ira. And then there's the 3 Judgments, 3 Strikes, the 2 Cannons, and the 1 D-Barrier. I'm still a big fan of all of these, so that's why we're doing that. But that is the deck. Like I said, we're trying this out tonight, and then tomorrow I'm going to try out Primite Fiendsmith, where I take out all the Cashier cards, put in the Primite cards, including like White Dust on, and then of course the absolute aura machine that is Summon Skull. So looking forward to using this guy tomorrow, because it's going to be pretty cool. But let's get off to locals. Okay, we are up with a match here of the Kashtira Fiendsmith deck that I was playing, as well as a Shark Ryziel deck against it, and I win the die roll, so that means that I am up first. Looking at my hand, I decide to open with Kashtira Unicorn. That's going to prompt some interaction there from my opponent, most likely. Takes a moment to consider what he can do before activating his infinite permanence, cutting me off of that berth. But then I normal summon Ghost Mortar and Moonlit Chill. Not the best summon, but that is okay, because any 2 monsters, of course, gets me to Moon of the Closed Heaven, which then gets me to the Fiendsmith's Requiem, which then, of course, gets us to the copy of Lacrima of the Crimson Tears. And we are basically set up to go. Send the Fiendsmith Engraver to the grave. Sorry about the glare there, still working on angles with the lighting in the shop. It is a bit rough. But from there, take a moment to consider, activate Requiem to equip, and we just go into a Necroquip Princess. This is kind of the bread and butter, honestly, of what I was doing most of the time, was just summoning Necroquip Princess, setting some back row, and passing. Now that should telegraph that my hand has a couple of hand interactions, or at least 1 hand interaction, and then some back row. I do also have the Lacrima to bring back the Requiem, of course, and we see him lead off with a spell which quickly gets negated by, I think it was the 7th attack, gets negated by Ash Blossom, which then gets another draw through the Necroquip Princess. And we see Big Jaws being summoned in a moment. I then clarify whether or not Big Jaws will activate on summon, or if it's all one effect. He, of course, lets me know that it is a different effect, so I chain the Lacrima to the effect to bring back the Requiem. From there, he adds the, I believe it's Drake Shark, to hand, activates its effect. I chain Requiem to special summon the Lacrima back that we just shuffle back into the deck. And then on a new chain, the Lacrima will activate to send Fiendsmith in Paradise to the graveyard, which will set up my mid-game plan here, because it's going to mean that he just simply cannot interact at all. If he summons anything important, it's going to be hit by that Paradise, which then, of course, gets the Desiree to the graveyard, layering the interaction pretty darn well there. Also keep in mind, too, that at this point, he doesn't know what my face downs are. All he knows is that I have an Ash Blossom and one card in hand. Or yeah, that I had an Ash Blossom, which now is one card in hand. I have a Necroquip Princess, a Lacrima, and 2 face downs. So we see the Xyz summon of a Duo Drive happening there before it is met with a Dominus Purge on its effect. And because the Fiendsmith in Paradise is in the graveyard, that means that the Duo Drive is going to be destroyed. That's one of the really cool interactions that the deck has. Then he normal summons, or special summons Sword Ryzeal, and I respond with Fiendsmith in Paradise as well as Infinite Impermanence. Now the idea here that I had was that he already had to use the Sharks, and he's having to summon Sword with only like 1 or 2 cards left in hand, I believe. So the idea was that hopefully he won't have the additional extender beyond the Sword, but he does in fact have it with Node, sending the last card in hand to the graveyard to special summon back the Sword before overlaying into, he puts down Duo Drive. Before I pointed out that he had used its effect, we both forgot that initially. So, you know, he corrects that mistake to put out the detonator, because, you know, we're just trying to practice. We're trying to be reasonable human beings here. Attaches the Duo Drive to the detonator, and it's going to just have a pretty simple game plan from here of just attacking with a detonator. It doesn't seem like a lot, but he did have all of his resources exhausted, and mind you, my graveyard is loaded with an Engraver, which will then also have that effect on my following turn. I also have a Necroquip on the field, so he is forced to do something, because if he doesn't, I can simply summon a Light Dark Chaos Angel. So he attacks the Necroquip, gets that off the field, which is the correct call, because the Lacrima being engraved would not really matter, but getting that Necroquip off the field is going to be huge, because in case I do draw some kind of card like an Engraver, that would be massive. Passes play over to me, and I just take a moment to check my graveyard. Remember, we do have the Engraver, and that is being activated, putting back the Requiem, and he is actually going to go ahead and chain the detonator to get rid of the Lacrima. This prevents a Chaos Angel play, which is going to be pretty darn solid, honestly. Unfortunately for him, he is down to 1 card on the field versus my 2 cards in hand, as well as an Engraver that hasn't really, I haven't invested anything. Taking a moment to ponder the decisions. I don't quite remember what is in my hand at this point, but I am either able to go into more Fiendsmith lines, or I can just simply go into a Typhon directly. The Fiendsmith lines do play into the detonator more, so instead of like trying to do like a sequence Fiendsmith lines, I instead just go into Requiem to load that in my graveyard for the following turn, and then summon another Engraver, which will then also help, because in case he does draw any card to get rid of the 1 Engraver, I will have a second one loaded. And from there, I go into Superstar Slayer Typhon, activate its effect, get rid of the detonator, and swing for 29. Now, I believe I drew a cash card for turn, which in retrospect, maybe I could have actually played a little differently. I could have played a little bit more aggressively with the Fiendsmith cards to burn out that interaction, but chose not to do that. And now we are in a super simplified game state. He draws, sets 1, passes, I draw, and I believe we are at the point where I'm just going to attack with Typhon. And now at this point, I'm fairly certain I have a Pressure Planet in my hand, and we go ahead and activate the planet. And we're going to go ahead and grab a copy of Kashtira Unicorn. That'll also keep the Typhon at 3,000 attack. And he is on a very short clock here. So now we're going to activate the Engraver, returning the Desiree, and we're met by Called by the Grave. So now that one Engraver is gone, the Desiree is put back in the extra deck. And attack for 3,000 and pass turn over to my opponent, who draws for turn, activates Cross, which is a huge top deck, mind you. When he activates Cross to return 2, he's going to get that additional draw, which is going to hopefully bring him back into the game, but he has to set one and just simply pass. Passes play back to me where I draw. I didn't activate the Lacrima in the end phase, and that's a huge mistake there. I was too eager to get to the play, didn't actually take time to look at my resources. So I activate Engraver again, returning Requiem, and then we go into Requiem one more time, bring out another Lacrima. Yet again, just looping these resources, really trying to maximize how many cards I have over him, even with the mistake. And then there's a normal summon of, looks like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. And a link into sequence is made. Now the reason why I'm doing all of this is because this plays around that being a Book of Moon. It would have to be Book of Eclipse for him to actually be able to win the game. So I'm trying to make this big push, so that way if it is a singular Book of Moon, which I do know that he plays because we saw that earlier in the game, I am at least able to still end the game. And the sequence got to go off, so now I believe I go into Agnum Day to send the card with Desiree. Yeah, so we're going to send the face down, and it is in fact the Book of Moon. So now we can simply just attack with Agnum Day and then attack for game. And that was the whole reason for that line, is because that means that I'm able to play around the singular Book of Moon, hoping that he doesn't also play Book of Eclipse, which is a pretty darn powerful card. Now going into side decking here, I'm assuming my opponent's going to go first. So I'm going to have to bring in some more hand traps, probably another Ghost Ogre. Could even consider another Ghost Bell with the ability to play through Eclipse Twins because of Bell. Using a card to force out the detonator to destroy itself, and then the Eclipse Twins targets 2, and then you just activate Bell and crush that entire line right there. Not too much to say here, honestly. It's just a pretty simple swap in and out of weaker hand traps for the better ones. So we're just going to have to see what happens here for the remainder of the match. One of the cool things about the Kashtira deck is also that we are able to punish kind of playing into these weaker hand traps, sort of like Ghost Mortar and stuff like that, because once the game state gets simplified, a Fenrir just sticking on the field is just going to be huge. And that's honestly enough a lot of times to win a game, is just sticking a big monster on the field. It reminds me a lot of Gadgets. Decks are cut though, and we are into game 2. And we're going to take a look here. We've seen a couple of back row, and that is just a pass there. Not ideal when you're playing Rizuli. You obviously want to see a starter card. But I lead off with Pressure Planet Raitsoth. Get the search there, which is going to be huge. Grab a Unicorn. Not met with a Droll, as summon the Unicorn, activate the effect, and is met by Imperm yet again. And then I just simply attack with Unicorn. That's all I can do for 2,600 damage, and we're just going to pass turn by setting a couple back row, and that is it. And by a couple, I mean 3 apparently. Holy cow. Now he draws for turn and activates Book of Eclipse to start off his turn. That tells me that he's going to be trying to do as much as he can. He activates Surfacing Big Jaws. I look at my face downs. The Surfacing Big Jaws effect happens, and then it is met with an infinite impermanence on the search, cutting him off of that huge search to go into a level 4, which then can obviously get into a rank 4. And now he can't even answer the Unicorn. which means he's going to have to set another card. I flip the unicorn and get another draw, and then draw for turn. So that was actually a massive swing in card advantage right there, which gives this kind of a deck even more leverage. Unicorn is activated once more and is met by yet another imperm. Switch unicorn to attack position and attack yet again. Really simplified game state, but so far you have to think about it this way. That one unicorn has gotten 2 infinite impermanents and a Book of Eclipse gone, all by itself. And I go ahead and set a monster. Now the reason for setting that monster is so that way on the following turn, I draw again, activate unicorn one more time. Then while I'm searching, I'll explain the logic behind setting that monster. It was so that way on the following turn, if I am able to establish another body besides the unicorn, I can simply go into all of my plays. And it was also a Fula, so it's not like it's a particularly useful card. And we go ahead and link into the moon, and we go and do the usual plays here, where we're going to go moon into Requiem, and then Requiem is going to get Lacrima, and we are off to the races here. That is a huge swing of advantage. Remember that one unicorn has gotten so many cards too that the game state is unfortunately very simplified. And then the Lacrima sends an Engraver. Engraver's effect activates and is met by a Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. Huge hand trap right now. But then the Requiem goes and is equipped to Lacrima, and the Necroquip Princess is summoned. Kashtira Birth is activated next, bringing back the unicorn yet again. And attack with the Necroquip over another Ghost Bell, attack with unicorn directly, and I get to look at that extra deck, and we're just going to go ahead and rip the copy of Detonator out of there. And we're just going to, I believe, pass turn with that, and he is down to 1 draw, and let's see if that does anything. I don't think it's going to get him there. Let's remember he is facing down a unicorn, a Necroquip, 2 back row, a Kashtira Birth, which can get rid of cards in the graveyard, and a whole grip of cards. That is not ideal. He sets a monster, and that is gonna be it for his turn. Attack and attack for game. And just like that, this match is over, and we are off to the next round. Last night went pretty well. Ended up 3-1, only losing the last round to Fiendsmith Ryziel, which was, kind of just how that goes. Round 1 I played against Pearly, actually, which was at 2-0. What was interesting about that, actually, was that I noted that Pearly was a deck I was low-key considering to try out, so that was kind of interesting to see. Game 1, he ended up breaking pretty hardly. He just didn't draw, any names at all, so he had to pass. And I opened up with, 3 hand traps, and then Unicorn and Planet, so I could do, the Unicorn grab Birth, Planet, grab Fenrir, grab another name, and then just swing with those and do a ton of damage, then do my combo afterwards. That was pretty unfortunate for him. Game 2, he tried to set up with Beauty, the Field Spell, and my friend. Unfortunately, I managed to break everything because of attacking into one of his other monsters with a M7 and then going into Zeus. So he just didn't have any resources after that. Round 2 is on the screen right now. I played against the Shark Ryziel. It wasn't anything really noteworthy, so you guys can take a look at that. And then round 3, I faced Memento. Game 1, I opened up fairly decently, but I got OTK'd. That's still a deck I struggle with a lot. There's a lot of effects going on there, and I think everybody kind of struggles with the deck if you don't play it. I just drew a little awkwardly, and I think I used my interactions very poorly. Game 2, I opened up with Strike and Imperm along with some hand traps, and so he tried to push through that and just couldn't, and then I could very quickly win the game with a simplified game state there. And then game 3, I opened up Double Mourner, Valor, Imperm, and just prevented him from setting up at all, and then I managed to quickly kind of take him out from there. Round 4, I faced the Fiendsmith Ryziel deck that I lost to. Game 1, I just couldn't do anything. He opened up with, the standard Fiendsmith Ryziel plays, and I couldn't push that, which is unfortunate. And then game 2, he opened up Drewsworm and Magnamut, and because of that, he hit my Requiem as well as my Engraver, and I just couldn't push past that, so that was unfortunate. And despite making a misplay with Triple Tactics Talent, where he could have just easily won the game, and he ended up letting me get a turn for no reason, he ended up winning the game. So, wasn't much to say about that. yeah, it was overall not too bad, and we'll have to see how it goes tonight. I'm gonna try a different version of the Fiendsmith deck tonight, and I'll show you guys the deck right now. Okay, so instead of going Kashtira Fiendsmith tonight, I'm gonna try the Primate Fiendsmith deck. I've been a really big fan of the Primate cards, so getting to use them with Fiendsmith is something I'm very excited to do. And I also changed a couple of cards from the list that I took inspiration from, which is just Joshua Schmidt's list. It's very similar. I changed just a couple of small things that I think might be beneficial to look at going forward. But overall, the deck is very straightforward and simple. So first we're going to start off with the Primate cards. There is the 3 Ether Barrel, 3 Lordly Loads, 2 Drill Beams, and Roar. Roar is pretty awesome. If you don't know what it does, you pay 2,000 life points and declare a normal monster name. The declared monster and primate monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle until the end of the opponent's turn. Then, if you control no monsters, you can special summon 1 monster of the declared name from your deck in defense position. And then, if your opponent normal summons a monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 normal monster you control or in your graveyard, and then banish 1 monster from the field with less attack than that monster. So this is a really good interaction tool because it can obviously hit normal summons, which is for most decks like the weakest part. We can also just hit anything, and then it's another way to it's a defensive card, which is really cool, but it's also a way to get to your normal monsters. And those normal monsters are White Duston and Summon Skull. Now I will say, post Alliance Insight, I'm going to revisit this deck or continue to play this deck, and I will be taking out White Duston for Tippity, I think is the name of it, the new level 4 Light Fiend. It's 0 attack, but it's a level 4, which is really obviously beneficial because, as we saw in the Kashtira Primate deck, being able to have access to those level 4s can be really good because of rank 4s. And then Summon Skull is played because it is the largest attack, level 6 normal monster, or normal fiend. So, yeah. But what's really cool is that just Ether Barrel can actually get you to your full Fiendsmith combo. And by doing, and what I mean is you go normal summon Ether Barrel, set Lordly Load, you'll activate Lordly Load to grab Roar, and then you'll use Ether Barrel to send Summon Skull to the graveyard. And then you can activate Roar to special summon White Duston, and then since you have a Light Fiend, you can go into Requiem and do all that fun stuff. The double Drill Beam is just because that card is honestly like one of the best cards in the deck. I had commented when I played the Kashtira Fiendsmith, the Kashtira Primate deck, that I just wanted to see more Drill Beams, so getting to play second one is obviously really good. I could even see it bumping up to 3, honestly. The card is that solid. For the Fiendsmith cards, we have 3 Engravers, 1 Lacrima, 1 Lurie, 2 Tract, and the Paradise. I think this engine is pretty much just like spoken to into the ground, so I don't need to explain that. And then the rest is all hand traps. So for the 3 ofs, there's 3 Ash Blossoms, 3 Effect Veilers, 3 Imperms, 3 Nibirus, and then there's 2 Ghost Bell, 2 Ghost Ogre, 2 Ghost Mourner, and then I'm playing 2 Baldrake, 1 Drewsworm, 1 Magnum, 1 Drewsworm, and then the Talent. So the non-engine is very straightforward. It's just a ton of hand traps because this is just as we've seen with all of the Fiendsmith decks, you want a ton of hand traps because of the Necroquip Princess. You'll notice that I bumped the beer up to 3 as opposed to the 2 of that it was at in the Fiendsmith Kashtira deck. Without having the Kashtiras there to be like an anti-synergy with Nibiru, I figured it might as well bump it up to 3, and people are playing harder into Nibiru than ever. Plus, when you have Nibiru, like I said, plus any other hand trap, it becomes like a blowout. So that's why you see that there. Mourner was something that I decided to play that wasn't being played initially. I took out one of the Ogres and put in 2 Mourners. That's because I just wanted to have additional names at all times, and I felt like it was pretty solid. You know, Mourner is one of those cards that it's never like the first choice for hand traps, but it is definitely up there in terms of my choices for hand traps overall. It's always one of those cards that when it comes up and you're glad you have it, you are really glad you have it, but then like the games where it's not great, it's just really weak and you wish it was anything else. But I figured with how much the normal and special summon like activation window is being valued in the current format, that maybe Warner might be worth considering to play still. I'm not totally sold on the Bestials yet. Those could come out for Dominus Purges. I personally am a really big fan of Purge in the current format. I think that being able to lock out the search effects, because they're so limited when it comes to the best decks, is really valuable. So it might be worth playing Purges over the Bestials, and then even considering a card like Call by the Grave to stop graveyard effects as well. The only thing is that Purge doesn't interact well with a large portion of the extra deck, which is obviously not beneficial. But that is the main deck. For the extra deck, I'm playing one Desiree, and I actually took the second one out for Fiendsmith's Rex Tremede, I don't know. This card is actually really good, not for its summon effect, actually. But just so you know what it does, it's a level 3, 6, 9 Light Fiend, 3000 attack, takes one Fiendsmith Fusion monster and one Fusion or Link monster. And it's unaffected by card effects except for Fiendsmith cards, while equipped within a Fiendsmith equip spell. So, you know, if you equip it with any of the links. But then you can only use the following effects once per turn. If it's Fusion summoned, you can discard one card, send one Light Fiend monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. The more important effect, though, is if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one other Fiendsmith card in your graveyard or banishment and add it to your hand. The reason why that's important is because I've noticed that, I specifically noticed last night that only playing one Requiem was really rough if they hit it, and I never summoned the second Desiree. So I figured I could instead have this as a way to recycle whatever they banish with their Bestials or DD Crows or whatever. And if it does come up, then it's just, you know, obviously like a boss monster. Because I could even send the Desiree off of Paradise and then send it back with Sequence to fuse into this. That is actually an option, which is pretty funny to think about. I don't think it'll probably come up, but I did want to have it just in case. And then I'm playing Necroquip Princess, Chaos Angel, and then Caesar, Lars, M7. All of these are actually live now because I'm not playing Purge. Gaia Charger, or Gaia Dragon. I don't have the full armored Dark Knight Lancer, so we're playing Gaia. If I can get Lancer, I'll switch that out. And then Zeus and Typhon. And then for links, there's Requiem, Sequence, SP, Moon, and Aghanim Day. It's pretty straightforward, though. Not much to say there. And then for the side deck, it is honestly more hand traps, just like last time. So there's the 3 Fuelos. This time I'm siding the Drolls. I'm not totally sold on this part yet. I really like Droll in the main deck, but I wanted to give this a shot tonight. And then I'm playing 3 Cycle Readers. So while Crow can hit anything, I think that Cycle Reader being able to hit multiple cards at once is going to be huge. One of the things that I can see definitely being a thing is in a Fiendsmith mirror match, they go activate, what's the name? Lacrima, target a Requiem, and I can go Cycle Reader, target the Requiem and something else, and then the Lacrima still has to go back to the deck, so then they lose even more resources. Not totally sure if this is going to be the best thing to do, but it seems pretty solid so far. And you know, it is a level 3. Funnily enough, it is a level 3 tuner, so that does matter. Because if I ever can get a level 7 out, or I tactics take something, that could come up. Yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. And then I'm citing 3 Strike and 3 Judgment. That is the deck for today. We'll have to see how this deck does at locals, because this is the final bit of testing I get before the 3v3 tomorrow, and obviously I want to do well, so hopefully this deck performs well and I can play this. Otherwise I'll be back to the cashier version. And I am back with another featured match. This time it's going to be Mitsurugi Raziel versus the Primite Fiendsmith deck that I just showed you. This was the final round of Swiss, I believe. I'm going to apologize now for the glare. It was pretty horrendous. I did not account for just how bad the lighting is in the room, but that is okay. Gonna explain kind of the logic here behind a lot of the choices. This is a pretty long one, so let's just dive right in. Like I said, this is round 4. This is X1 myself, and then the undefeated Mitsurugi Raizio player. I had lost pretty miserably earlier in the night, so that was most unfortunate. I believe I played against Malice and just died. So, going into this, desperately need to win, otherwise we're not going to get any prizing. And I believe he wins the die roll. He starts us off here. And as you can see from my hand, we have a good chunk of nothing really going on. We have a Triple Tax talent, which is going to be a pretty darn good card when we're going second into cards like Ame no Mitsurugi. But Saji is summoned, adding a copy of Mitsurugi Prayers to hand. Then I believe I have a droll. He activates the Mitsurugi Prayers, and that gets to go through. Now, the reason why I wouldn't activate droll if I did have it is because I would be met with the prayers in response anyway, and he adds Ame no the Ame to hand, and then activates Mitsurugi Prayers, special summoning the Ame from hand, tributing from deck another copy of Ame. Now, one of the cool things about playing against the Mitsurugi deck, does he tribute other Ame? No, he actually tributes 2 level 4s. Now, one of the cool things about playing against Mitsurugi, though, is that their graveyard interaction is really layered, and you have to keep that in mind, because you can always ash the Ame or Futsu from grave. He tributes Night Sword, and Kusanagi adds back the ritual and special summons the Night Sword. Goes to summon from deck, tributes the Ame, and now he's going to summon Futsu in defense position. Ame is going to trigger to add a card to hand, and I believe it's met by Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. That's what I mean. Oh no, it's met by Ghost Bell, which is also another really awesome interaction that I have, because it could special summon on resolution. I can shut down that entire effect. I'm looking at my hand with just a grip of not a whole lot going on, and then he activates talent to look at my hand, and I chain the Bestial Magnamut to banish the Ame, and I have an Ether Barrel, a Magnamut, and a Triple Tactics, an Ether Barrel, Fiendsmith Engraver, and Triple Tactics Talent in hand. Now, he makes the mistake of sending back the Ether Barrel, and that's really big because the Magnamut is just going to search out that Ether Barrel anyway. I think instead what he should have sent back is the Engraver, or even the Talent, because sending back Barrel just doesn't do anything. But he's going to continue his turn. He knows now that I have no other interactions, and he's going to set up a crazy field here. So we see the Duo Drive being summoned, and we're going to get a free +2 off that Duo Drive, adding Cross, and adding Sword. Now remember, he has used his normal summon, so Ice doesn't get as much value here, but Cross will come down. Sword will be summoned, which will add an X'd Raziel, I believe. Yep, he adds X'd before special summoning the X'd and sending away a Exceeds monster for that. Sends away the Aggregator. Now he overlays and goes into the Detonator, I believe here. Yep, we're going to attach the Mirror Logic Aggregator to the Detonator, and he is pretty much locked and loaded from there, honestly. He's going to have Futsu, he's going to have Detonator, he's going to have Saji to protect, and I believe Futsu can even summon back the Ame, I don't quite remember, but Ether Barrel is searched by Magnamut. I have Ether Barrel, Talents, Engraver, 1 unknown, and a Magnamut on the field. Draw for turn, and looking at my hand, got to figure out exactly how I want to play this out, because remember, I do also have to deal with the cross negation as well. So we have cross negation, we have talent, or we have Detonator for 3, Futsu, kind of just everything. Activates Ash Blossom on my talents. I on my Engraver, which then means I'm going to activate my talents to take, and he thinks about what to do here. Activates his Detonator to destroy a card. Now, he ends up destroying my Magnamut, I believe. which is perfect because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the detonator. I'm going to attack with the detonator. And now also by doing this, I have also turned off the cross because there's nothing he can detach from, which is going to be huge for my turn because I can just simply attack with the detonator over the duo drive, dealing 500 damage, which isn't a particularly large amount, but that is going to mean that I'm going to be able to summon Divine Arsenal AA Zeus in main phase 2, clearing the field of everything. So you can see we do that, and he considers what to do for a moment before being met with the Saji getting summoned off the Futsu. Now I let this go because if I activate Zeus earlier in response to the Futsu, then the Saji will be on the field. I need to clear as many cards as I can because remember, I am playing from behind. So now the Zeus is activated, detaching everything else besides the aggregator, clearing his entire field, and I normal summon. Can't quite tell what that is from the glare, unfortunately. Probably the Ether Barrel. Yep, we set the Lordly Load, activate the Lordly Load, which is going to get access to most likely Drill Beam, because I can't really do the whole Fiendsmith combo here. I mean, I could, but I would lose it on the Zeus. Doesn't really seem all that great, so instead, what I do is I grab the Drill Beam. Actually, you know what? I think in retrospect, I probably should actually do the combo with the Fiendsmith cards and the Ether Barrel, you know, using the Ether Barrel, and yep, okay, that's what we ended up doing. We're gonna go into Moon of the Closed Heaven. Doing it the other way just wouldn't make sense, like passing with just a random Zeus on the field wouldn't make much sense. So instead, we go Moon into Requiem. Now this is gonna help me load up my Graver, which is gonna be massively necessary because remember, I know that he has at least 1 prayers and a ritual spell. So we summon the Lacrima, send the Engraver to Grave. We're going to use the Engraver's effect, probably put back that Moon of the Closed Heaven. Special summon back Engraver, and it is met by a by a Meowls. He's main decking Meowls. And then those two are stacked on top of one another to make a copy of Caesar. Now, Caesar is going to be huge because I can just go ahead and set 1 card, activate the Lordly Load. We're going to call Summoned Skull. Oh, and actually right here we realize I am not actually able to do that overlay because I need to summon Necroquip first. Quick little fix of the game state. There we go. So now we activate the Lordly Load, call Summoned Skull to summon the Summoned Skull out onto the field, which will then turn on my Drill Beam. So we have a Caesar for 2, which will shut down 2 of those spells. We also have Drill Beam, which is going to be huge, and our graveyard is fully loaded, so we can always do the Lacrima Desiree line as well. He's going to take a moment to think about what he has. He doesn't really have a whole lot of options. Unfortunately, his turn was not the most efficient. Normal summon the Saji, activates effect. Now, here's the thing, is if I activate Drill Beam and he chains prayers, in theory, I could negate the prayers, but the Drill Beam will have been wasted then. Instead, if I let the Saji go, he can only add another prayers or another ritual. Either way, I have 3 interactions that can deal with those 3 spells. So that is going to be a much more efficient usage of card advantage there. No need to bother trying to stop the Saji. He adds the ritual to hand. And at this point, I go ahead and activate Lacrima to special summon back the Requiem, and it is met by, I believe, Call by the Grave. Not quite sure what that was. Yep, that is Call by the Grave on the Lacrima. Now, I think he actually should have Called by the Grave the Requiem. I think that's a little bit more important, but that's not really here or there. Not really that big of a deal. And now he can summon Typhon, which will then immediately be met by my Drill Beam. And now his 2 rituals, as well as the prayer, have been shut down, locking him out of any summons for the turn. He then is informed by me about the Typhon and has to scoop up from there because his turn is done. So that was game 1, and now we're going to go into game 2, hopefully able to pick up some more wins from there, because my goodness, that was quite an intense game 1. I didn't actually think I was going to be able to break through the board going second there, with the Ame as well as the Futsu and everything else. I think if he had instead hit the Engraver, that game would have been completely different. If he had hit the Engraver, I would not have had access to the Fiendsmith engine, obviously, which then means I wouldn't be able to... I'd still have access to the Fiendsmith engine. I wouldn't have as good of access to the Fiendsmith engine. I also wouldn't have been able to use every card in my hand. I would have had a dead Ether Barrel, or in theory, even a Bestial. It's up in the air. It's really hard, but I think that the Ether Barrel probably wasn't the choice. You could make the argument, though, that hitting the Ether Barrel means that I have to search for the barrel instead of searching for like Jerusalem or Baldrake. That is definitely an option. Not totally sure the logic there. It's kind of just what you think your lose condition is going to be. My hand was pretty stacked looking back at it, though, going into that, so he was definitely going to be having a hard time being able to break through all of those lines. So we are shuffling up for the next game here, and we will have to see how this goes. Also, shoutouts to the Alistair Matt. Big fan of Alistair. It's always nice to see those kind of a little bit more custom style cloth mats that a lot of players have begun to use. But we're going to get into our game 2 here. Duel 2 of round 4. Both decks are shuffled. Both decks are cut. And he will be starting. I tried to get the mind game there. Looking at my hand, though, looks like a whole lot of interaction. Got Ash, White Dust on, Foolos. Looks like another hand trap, some spell. We have 2 interactions at least. Oh, and Ghost Mourner, so that'll be pretty good as well. And now we see the prayers act, or not the prayers, the ritual activated, summoning an Ame no Murakami no Mitsurugi, I believe is the name, from the hand, tributing 2 from the deck. We're going to see Saji as well as, looks like Kusanagi. So we're going to see both effects activated there. Going to help layer in all of that interaction that he's going to need, all of those engine cards that he's going to want to have. And I take a moment to ponder whether or not Ghost Mourner would be worth it, mostly just to see, you know, if I activate the Ghost Mourner and he negates it, right, then that's fine. If he doesn't, that is also fine, because then that means that the rest of my interactions will be turned on for the turn. But I ultimately decided not to do that. 7th Ascension is activated. Where's that Tachyon? 7th Tachyon, I believe. Revealing the Masquerade, which will get him access to his Ice Ryziel. Huge boost of consistency there. And then he just has to simply put a card on top. Not that it's truly going to matter, because that Ice is going to shuffle up the deck in a moment anyway. And remember, I have that Foolos in hand as well. That's going to be a massive piece of economy there for me. And we see Ice Ryziel summoned. Activated its effect. Foolos is chained. He chains the Ame, and I discard the Ghost Mourner to pay the additional discard requirement for the Ame to keep my Foolos live. So now we have an Ash Blossom as well in hand, and I draw yet another, I believe that's another Mourner. Can't quite tell from the angle, but we see, looks like Sword summoned, adding X to hand. And now he takes a moment to contemplate what he has left. Not a ton of decisions that he can, not a whole lot he can do, unfortunately, through the Foolos. So he has to really be careful about that. Unfortunately, having to start with the Ame on field meant that the X would not be quite as powerful. But we see a Ritual activated to summon from the deck, which will fetch me yet another draw. And that will get an Effect Veiler. The Ame will activate, which is met by the Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. So now the Ame does not get the search, nor does it get the special summon. Huge, huge swing there. He takes a moment to consider what he's got left. He's got 2 cards left in hand. Overlays. He's thinking about it. Now, this is one of the times where it's really hard too, because you have to remember, I have had Ash as well as Foolos for 2 key effects. I also have an Effect Veiler in hand as well. So there's quite a bit on my side of my minimal investment. And he summons the Photon. We draw yet another card. Did not quite catch what we drew there. But remember, we also have that white dust on just hanging out. And there are 2 set cards before I activate Nibiru, the Primal Being, in the end of the main phase, summoning a token there. Now, I actually end up thinking to myself that summoning the Nibiru was a bit of a misplay because the Futsu will activate, which will then get him access to the trap card, which will be a negation. If instead I had just not summoned the Nibiru, I think I actually would have been fine. But, you know, that is a mistake that I made. Had to think about that maybe a little bit more carefully for the future. So now we see the Great Purification added to hand, which means I now have to deal with that as well as a Giant Nibiru token and the Futsu. Draw for turn. We draw a Lordly Load, which, along with the white dust on, is actually pretty darn good. Lordly Load is activated, and he takes a moment to contemplate what he can do here. All right, we are back. And the Futsu ended up being on the field to summon a Kusanagi back. The Lordly Load resolved. Missed a couple of moments there because the camera decided to stop recording. So just to review, we have a Futsu on the field, a Kusanagi, a Giant Nibiru token. The Futsu will now get an additional summon. There's also 2 unknown face downs, as well as 2 cards in hand that I'm going to have to play through. Not an ideal situation. Tract, I believe, is activated and discards a Luri. Not quite sure what is going on here, but we see an addition of the prayers to hand. So we are in a bit of a pickle here. And we see Requiem being equipped to the Lacrima, or at least attempting to. Yep, the Requiem is attached to the Lacrima before summoning an Necroquip Princess. Kind of just the card of the deck, honestly. The card is very powerful. Taking a moment to consider my plays here, because there really isn't a whole lot of gas left in the tank comparatively, but we activate Engraver, returning the Luri to special summon the Engraver, before being met with, potentially, one of those face downs. Remember, I know one of them is Great Purification. I don't quite know what the other 2 are quite yet. But Futsu is activated yet again to summon yet again. And this is where the problem comes in, because the Futsu is going to summon back his Ame, which will then board wipe me. I'm looking at what I can do here, realizing that I may have made a crucial error because the Futsu is going to hurt. I activate Drill Beam, revealing white dust on, targeting Futsu, but that is unfortunately going to be met most likely with a Great Purification. Yep, and that is the game, because that means that the Purification will negate the Drill Beam. The Futsu will summon back the Ame will clear out my monsters, and I am just not able to keep up from there. So going into a pivotal game 3, I will be up going first, siding into plenty of cards, including summoning back into that Summon Skull. I actually chose to side it out when going second because it is just yet another poor draw that the deck has, and there's just too many awkward cards in the deck to potentially risk drawing a Summon Skull going second. That might have worked for Yugi, but it does unfortunately not work for me. But going into game 3 here, plenty of time on the clock, I believe, as well. Both of those games took, I think, less than 20 minutes, so we are good to go. And we're going to have to see in this all-important game 3, what can I do? Now remember, I also am citing more additional cards like the Solemns and stuff like that. So going first, I actually have a ton of agency, and even though I might not draw a ton of hand traps, I am able to fairly effectively counter all of those pushes, which is going to be, I think, most likely the game-winning line for me is just being able to set up enough interactions that we can get to a simplified game state, and I can force those Primate cards to really shine. On his side, he's probably looking to side into board breakers like Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, potentially even stuff like Evenly Matched that's been a little bit more popular lately. Droll Lockbird might be huge, to cut me off of all those Fiendsmith lines if I open up with like Tract or something like that. a lot of different options there. So we'll have to see what exactly he decides to do. All right, the decks are shuffled and cut, and we are off to a game 3. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, I am up first. And it is going to be a tense game 3. Leading off with the Lordly Load. That's going to grab an Ether Barrel, most likely, and is met by Droll and Lockbird. Not an ideal start by any means, but that is okay. The Ether Barrel is summoned and activated to set something here. We'll have to see. Now, if I set Primite Roar, that can be a bit of a defensive option. I can also set Drill Beam, and then just activate the Ether Barrel, sending like Summon Skull or something, and then have that monster in the field. But I already have Drill Beam in hand, it looks like. So maybe setting Roar wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. That is an option. Definitely options to consider here. All right, this is game 3. So yep, we're gonna set Roar, try to minimize the damage that I'm gonna be taking. And then we activate Ether Barrel's effect, actually, to send a normal monster from deck to graveyard. Not often something we see, but it looks like White Duston was sent. Can't quite tell with the glare what that is. I believe that was White Duston. If we see a Requiem summoned, then we know that that is, in fact, a White Duston. Now, the reason why this actually works is because I can go ahead and set the Drill Beam, and then on the opposing turn, I can activate the Primite Roar and then chain Requiem, getting rid of monsters, or I can activate the Requiem first, chain Roar, because then I won't have a monster in the field, so I can actually just summon the Summon Skull off of the Roar, as well as getting the Lacrima on the field through the Requiem. And we see Mitsurugi Prayers being activated, and this is in the main phase, which means that I can chain the Requiem, and then now I will chain Primite Roar, paying 2,000 life points and calling Summoned Skull. Now, the reason why this is important is because that Summoned Skull is, of course, a normal monster, but also can't be destroyed by battle. So that's going to be pretty awesome, thanks to the Primite Roar. And now I also get Lacrima. The Prayers will resolve, adding him a card. And then on a new chain, the Lacrima will also get to send the copy of Fiendsmith in Paradise, giving me yet another interaction. And the Primate Roar in Graveyard is another layer of interaction as well, because that is going to be able to banish a monster he controls on a normal summon. So he's going to lose even more cards. And with the Prayers being gone, that means that summoning the normal summon is not as safe because there is no Prayers to chain. All that is going to be really important here coming up. Something to consider when you're playing this kind of a deck is just how you can maximize those small little windows of opportunity. And we see Triple Tactics Thrust activated, actually, which is a pretty terrifying card to see activated against you when you have nothing but back row. So I'm forced to Ash Blossom and Joy Spring that, unfortunately. Not an ideal card, but that is all right, because now we know he has Saji and I believe 2 or 3 unknowns. And Triple Tactics Talent is activated next as well. Huge card to activate. And he looks at my hand, and I have Baldrake and Fiendsmith Engraver. He gets rid of the Baldrake. Not going to be great for me, because now that means that my only interactions are going to be that copy of Fiendsmith in Paradise, as well as Roar and Drill Beam, which actually, if you think about it, that's still 3 interactions left. That's a pretty high amount for a very simplified game. And remember, he also doesn't have access to his copies of Prayers anymore because he has already used one. So we're going to have to see how he decides to navigate this. He knows that there's a Roar in Graveyard. I don't believe he's too familiar with the Primite cards, though, so he may not know that Roar has a hidden effect in the graveyard. To see what he decides to do. He's taking a moment to contemplate before summoning Ice Ryzeal and activating its effect. That is going to be met by a very quick Drill Beam to negate and banish that. No way we can let that go. He decides to set one and pass his turn.
I'm up, I draw for turn. Can't quite make out what I just drew there. But Ether Barrel comes back in the standby phase because of the Summoned Skull, meaning that I am just full of resources. We got Ether Barrel, Engraver, and that may have just been another Ether Barrel, but Ether Barrel is summoned. Prayers is activated, tributing a monster. Pretty darn good there. The Ether Barrel is going to go ahead and set another copy of Lordly Load. He's going to add the Ame to hand, and then he's going to special summon back to Saji. Saji is going to go ahead and activate. He's going to take 800 damage to add another card to hand. I activate the Lordly Load, add another Drill Beam to hand, and now I know that he only has the Ame in hand, so I can just play with absolute freedom. So you see me setting the Drill Beam with the Drill Beam effect, and then we equip the Requiem to the Lacrima. Go ahead and go into Necroquip Princess, activate Engraver. We're going to grab a copy of Tractor, which will also get another draw. Huge. This is going to be a massive turn. And he is just exhausted of resources, unfortunately. And that's kind of where this deck shines. Once you get to the point where there's not as many resources being exchanged, it's pretty hard to come back. So we see Drill Beam tracked, 2 other cards in hand, a fully loaded graveyard, a field with Summoned Skull, Ether Barrel, and a Necroquip on the field. Engraver puts back the White Dust on to be summoned back off of the Lordly Load later. Pretty incredible resources there. Switch the Engraver or the Summoned Skull to attack mode. We go into battle phase, attack, swing with everything, and that is just going to be way too much damage. Looking back at it though, let's see, that'd be 25 from Summoned Skull, 2,000 from Necroquip, so that's 45, 16 from the Ether Barrel, so 55, 61, 18 from the Engraver would be 79, would be 100 short. So instead what I do is I make Caesar, and we use the Lordly Load to summon the copy of White Dust on. Now we have Caesar, Ether Barrel, White Dust on, and a Necroquip on the field, as well as a face-down Drill Beam. The Ritual is also on the field, and the Caesar is just going to be able to get rid of the Ritual, and that's going to be just too much. He's going to normal summon Droll, and just like we saw in game 1, he's going to go ahead and make a Typhon, which is immediately met by a Drill Beam, and that is just too much, and that is the game.
Alright, so the 3v3 did not go according to plan. We ended up getting 3rd/4th place. Round 1 was really close and really frustrating, honestly. I played against White Forest as Amina, and game 1 went according to plan, you know, just tons of hand traps and slowly grinding out, which is good. Game 2 was really rough. I tried to push through his setup and I just couldn't quite get there, so that was unfortunate. You know, like when White Forest gets to play, it like just goes off, and that's unfortunate. And then game 3 was really frustrating because we were coming down to time, and then on top of that, I made a crucial mistake. I had played around basically everything except for a face down impermanence, and what ended up happening was I summoned Necroquip Princess and Engraver, attacked with both, and then main phase 2 made M7 and activated its effect and got hit by Imperm. Now the reason why that's so frustrating is because I had thought to myself, the only way I lose is if that is exactly impermanence and I play into it. So, because all he had was a copy of Deception, so he didn't really have anything. He was like relying on a top deck. So what I should have done instead was I had made the Necroquip, made the Engraver, that's totally fine, and then I was supposed to make M7, activate its effect, and then either add back an Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, or he Veilers it, or imperms it. If he imperms it, fine, that's great. If he doesn't, that's great. Because then what I do is when he imperms it, I attack, do less damage, but then I get to make a Zeus. And then no matter what happens, he cannot play through that with only 1 card and a Deception, because I can just board wipe and I have a couple hand traps and I can just absolutely win the game. What ends up happening is that he top decks a monster and gets to combo off. You know, does a lot of plays, and eventually it passes back to me with like a minute left, and I end up attacking and being ahead by 100 life points to win the round, which is crazy. So that ends up clutching it out for our team. Round 2, I play against Fire King, and those games were very one-sided. The Fire King deck unfortunately plays into the Cashier Fiends deck really badly. You know, you're forced to activate monster effects and stuff like that, which then, you know, exchanges poorly with the Cashier cards, and I have perfect information based on that. So that was a very quick 2-0 sweep there. And then round 3, I play against Water. And luckily, my teammate Brian, who plays even more than I do, knows how to play through Water, and explained to me, like, you know, the choke points based on like the information that his opponent was my opponent was presenting. But unfortunately, in game 2, because I lost game 1, I didn't have enough interaction. In game 2, I had to put him on having exactly one more extender than I did hand traps, and he did, so we lost that. And then we get paired in top 4 against the team from round 1 again, and unfortunately in game 3 I break and end up losing. So that was that tournament, and it was unfortunate, but you know, what can you do? Overall, the deck didn't perform quite as well as I liked. I actually felt like the Primate version might have been better, and you know, with Alliance Insight and Dippity looming, that might be something to consider for next week, but we'll have to see what happens.